Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. This is the Bhagavatam verse. Let's chant this verse a couple of times. This is from Uddhava and Vidura meeting in Vrindavan. This meeting takes place in Vrindavan. Vidura is also going north, and Uddhava is also going north. Krishna had told Uddhava to go to Badrika Ashram, and he told him to preach to the residents of Badrika Ashram, and preach to people on the way. Specifically, you'll find those teachings that he wanted to pass on in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Very, very wonderful, very extensive. I think if you look, you'll see that Uddhava is mentioned in 3rd canto, 10th canto, 11th canto. Next to Narada Muni, he may appear more than any other person, next to being the Krishna's eternal associates. He's an eternal associate also. So, and he's a very important person in our Krishna consciousness, and I'll try to mention that. So we'll go on over here. We got 35 minutes. Pulakod-bhina sarvango munchad-milad-drisha-shucha purnarto-lakshitastena sneha-prashara-sampluta. Translation. It was so observed by Vidura that Uddhava had all the transcendental bodily changes due to total ecstasy, and he was trying to wipe away tears of separation from his eyes. Thus Vidura could understand that Uddhava had completely assimilated extensive love for the Lord. Srila Prabhupada's purport. The symptoms of the highest order of devotional life were observed by Vidura, an experienced devotee of the Lord, and he confirmed Uddhava's perfectional stage of love of Godhead. Ecstatic bodily changes are manifested from the spiritual plane and are not artificial expressions developed by practice. There are 3 different stages of development in devotional service. The first stage is that of following the regulative principles prescribed in the codes of devotional service. The second stage is that of assimilation and realization of the steady condition of devotional service. And the last stage is that of ecstasy, symptomized by transcendental bodily expression. The 9 different modes of devotional service, such as hearing, chanting, and remembering, are the beginning of the process. By regular hearing of the glories and pastimes of the Lord, the impurities in the student's heart begin to be washed off. The more one is cleansed of impurities, the more one becomes fixed in devotional service. Gradually, the activities take the forms of steadiness, firm faith, taste, realization, and assimilation, one after another. These different stages of gradual development increase love of God to the highest stage. And in the highest stage, there were still more symptoms, such as affection, anger, and attachment, gradually rising in exceptional cases to the Mahabhava stage, which is generally not possible for the living entities. All these were manifested by Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the personification of love of God. In the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu by Srila Rupa Goswami, the chief disciple of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, these transcendental symptoms displayed by pure devotees like Uddhava are systematically described. We have written a summary study of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu entitled The Nectar of Devotion, and one may consult this book for more detailed information on the science of devotional service. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivashari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. This is quite a technical verse, and so if you bear with me, we'll try and highlight some of the points which were mentioned there. And it starts off with Vidura observing Uddhava's ecstatic symptoms. As I mentioned, they met at the name of the place, not on the bank of the Jamuna, where the Vrindavan town is, and Uddhava shared some of his very sutric experiences and realizations of Krishna. And as he did, he was experiencing love of God. Srila Prabhupada includes that in the translation, that he was wiping away tears of separation from his eyes. It's not in the Sanskrit, but it's quite obvious that this is what Uddhava is experiencing. He's already, and when you read the 11th canto, it's a very heart-wrenching scene when Uddhava wants to go with Krishna. He knows Krishna is going to leave the planet. He's seen all the symptoms, and he knows that sooner or later that's going to happen. But Krishna says, and he wants to go with Krishna, wherever Krishna goes. And Krishna actually first tells him, no, I want you to, now this is taking place in Dwarka, in a palace. I want you to go to Badrikashram. So then, of course, the whole event in Prabhas Kshetra takes place. In the meantime, Uddhava starts on his journey, but then he comes back. And he comes back and finds out where Krishna is. He heard where they went. And, well, there's a picture right there behind Panchatattva about Krishna in a four-armed form, and Maitreya and Uddhava are there. And Krishna again instructs Uddhava, and then again tells him, I told you to go, now you should go there. So Uddhava has a very unique relationship with Krishna, which we'll talk about, but he's Krishna's cousin. So they're connected as relatives. He's also in the category of Dasya Ras, although there are many others. And so he's really doesn't take much to just set his already extensive feelings of separation off. And so he starts speaking about Krishna's childhood pastimes and pastimes in Vrindavan. Very, very beautiful verses, some which are repeatedly quoted by Acharyas, Srila Prabhupada. And every time he says, they act like a Udipan, as an inspiration, and he tries to check his ecstatic symptoms. And now the point here is that Vidura was able to discern them. Srila Prabhupada said Vidura was an experienced devotee. So experience means that he was spiritually experienced. He himself had experience of phase of love of Godhead, very much in the servant category. And Srila Prabhupada often quotes this verse, which is sort of his version. Vaishnavriya Kriya Mudra Vijnana Vijay Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said this, that it's very difficult to discern the nature of a Vaishnava. Now here, when the word Vaishnava it's being used for prema bhaktas. It's not for everybody. So Srivas Thakur, he was the one who said even if Lord Nityananda walks into a brothel or an alcohol shop, I guess they must have had alcohol shops in India at that time as well, then still my faith wouldn't flinch 1 inch. So that doesn't mean we should go into brothels and alcohol shops, because if Lord Nityananda is going in there, then that's for his own purposes, sometimes very difficult to fathom. So Rupa Goswami actually also says this in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. He says that even the most learned scholar cannot understand the activities and symptoms of an exalted personality in whose heart love of Godhead has awakened. And Lord Chaitanya quotes this verse. Here this idea of a learned scholar, well, obviously mundane scholars, those who are not experienced with devotional service, who are either not very learned in the science of bhakti, bhakti ras, bhakti tattva, and who themselves have not really experienced bhava bhakti, prema bhakti. It becomes very difficult to see what is the characteristic or why a pure devotee acts the way he does. Here the word mudra. Mudra means, mudra means when you do mudras, but it means behavior, how someone is behaving. So, and that's brought up, the word behavior is very suitable because sometimes behavior may be very questionable. So there was also one relative of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Kalidas, who was the one who used to throw dice? Kalidas? Yeah. Anyhow, and Prabhupada points out that he was a Mahabhagavata, so, maybe he could do that, but you can't do that. Or we have the example of Vamsidas Babaji, who sometimes would take his Gaurnitai deity under his arm and say, all right, we're all going for a swim, and he'd just go into the Ganga and bathe them. Well, not a good idea. I would imagine they were wooden deities at the time, that you take deities under your arm and go swimming with them in the Ganga. So there's this verse also in the 11th canto, Evam Vratas Priyanama Kritya, and so on. And there are certain different type of behavioral characteristics are described. I'm just reading the second part. As his heart melts with ecstatic love, he laughs very loudly, or cries, or shouts, and sometimes he sings and dances like a madman. So that's what a devotee who is being pulled by the strings of prema, he has no independent volition. In fact, even Krishna fully submits himself to prema and to the love of his devotees. He gives up his independence, swarat. So he gives up his independence because he also is under his yogamaya. So these are, which doesn't mean that every devotee who laughs and cries and shouts and dances has prema. And that's the issue, is that this is a symptom of prema. Just like, for instance, I think runny nose and these things, these are also ecstatic symptoms. It doesn't mean everybody who's got a runny nose is experiencing ecstasy. So how to discern the two, and Srila Prabhupada's making reference to that in the purport, that this is not an artificial thing. You can't practice this. And unfortunately there is a class of pseudo-Vaishnavas who know how to cry when they do, for instance, usually kirtan, so that they're experiencing bhava, they're in ecstasy. But anyone knows how to cry. I mean, babies are crying all the time. And actors are, they have to know how to just cry at will. So it's possible. It doesn't require any spiritual advancement. And you can't practice it. It doesn't come by practice. It will come when Shuddha-sattva Visheshatma, when that transcendental potency descends upon a devotee. There's a very interesting example that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives, and he says that actually a devotee who has prema, he doesn't know why he's dancing and chanting. He doesn't experience his happiness or his distress. In other words, he doesn't recognize it for what it is. For instance, you know that ecstatic symptom of separation has extraordinary sorrow attributed to it, and externally it does look like sorrow, like they're crying, but actually internally it's a greater bliss than meeting with Krishna. And secretly, Sanatana Goswami explains, secretly devotees actually crave that separation. They want to be separated because they're experiencing something even greater. So it's a difficult thing. What do devotees look for? Well, they really look for two things: how a devotee's suffering is destroyed, and how a devotee is tasting, relishing happiness. Now that's Kleshagni, Shubhadha. These are the two symptoms of sadhana bhakti. But they're also the symptoms of prema bhakti. And although they're the symptoms of sadhana, neither in sadhana bhakti, neither in bhava bhakti, are these actually absolute and complete. Absolutely no suffering and topmost happiness. So devotees, learned devotees, and if someone is not learned, then they should not judge. Learned devotees, they try to understand by the presence and the absence of these symptoms. Aside from that, there's another thing that makes it very difficult to recognize the position of an advanced devotee, and that is that devotees are meant to be hiding their spiritual advancement, their spiritual development. Rakur Narottam Das Thakur's Apanabhajanakata Nakahibo Yatatata. He says, you shouldn't talk about your bhajan to anybody. It should be your own internal business. Otherwise, if you make a public show, some people will criticize, some people will get angry. So, and also Bhagavatam says a similar thing. When Lord Vishnu meets with Diti, he tells him, he says, now you shouldn't tell anybody about this, because spiritual subject matter, when disclosed, confidential spiritual subject matter, one's own experience, that diminishes when you talk about it. So, however, Vidura was experienced enough, learned enough. After all, he was Yamaraj. So Yamaraj is what's called an Ashrita Bhakta. He's a devotee who is an empowered demigod who has a service to Krishna, and he's exceptionally also among demigods, very, very advanced. So what were the symptoms that he saw? Well, some here are mentioned, some are implied. He became stunned. That Vishwanath Chakravarti explains. His whole body erupted in goosebumps. Pulakod bhina sarvanga means that his whole body was, hairs were standing on end, bodily. I don't know if anyone has any experience of that. Sometimes if you get really frightened, then that may be the first symptoms that you get before it comes from ecstatic love. And tears are flowing from your eyes, tears of separation. So here, by being stunned and so on, is indicating that this is actually beyond the stage of bhava. Bhava bhakti exhibits three symptoms. Mahaprabhu Kirtana Nitya Gita Vadiktama Janmanasura Sena Romancha Kampas Utaranga Bhajo Vande Guru Sri Charanarvindam. So we're singing this in the morning. These are the three symptoms of Bhava Bhakti. But by Uddhava's conduct, his tears, by his own knowledge, he could infer what it was that Srila Prabhupada, he would infer what it was that Uddhava was feeling. Of course, there's one way when you know somebody's spiritual stature, trustworthy person, and that's when they tell you. So there were very wonderful events, which I won't mention now, of when Srila Prabhupada actually revealed, number one, that Krishna sent him from the spiritual world to write his books, and so many other things. Chaitanya Charitamrita, Prabhupada says his father used to always pray to sadhus who came for lunch that let my son become a servant of Srimati Radharani, and Srila Prabhupada says, well, now I'm engaged in that service. So we continue that Uddhava completely assimilated, and I have problem with Prabhupada's use of this assimilated because he seems to use it for two different things. Extensive love for the Lord, he's talking about love here. And he had all the transcendental bodily changes due to total ecstasy. Now, if you read Nectar of Devotion, I won't ask whether everybody's read the Nectar of Devotion, but if you want to know about Bhakti Yoga, You have to read it, at least that. And Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu is also, it's what Prabhupada made the study from, extremely important. Now BBT is actually doing a publication, translation, commentary. Seems that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur also commented. Aside from Jiva Goswami and Chakravarti Thakur, they are the most prominent commentators. Although it's said here that extensive love for the Lord and total ecstasy, symptoms of the highest order of devotional love, the perfectional stage of love of Godhead, it does not mean that Uddhava is on the topmost platform of love of Godhead, or that he experienced everything. But love of Godhead is the topmost platform. It is the sadhya. So you've got to go, and you've got a process for getting there. There's two kinds of devotees. So you've got sadhakas, and you've got siddhas. That's all. So prema is siddha. Even if one comes to the stage of ecstatic love of God, then it's still not siddha. That's why a Bhava Bhakta is also the topmost level of sadhaka. There's still a sadhaka. You've got the lowest level, which you could mark as being nishta, or if you want to be very generous, it can be like bhajana kriya, but that is the topmost level. So this siddha is not such an easy thing. So Prabhupada's using this word in a very generic sense, that it's highest. It's highest because prema is highest. But if we get around to it, prema has various different stages, and there are devotees who have achieved that highest. Indra, he has a type of love for the Lord. This is the hierarchy that is the first volume of Brihad Bhagavatamrita. Indra, more advanced is Lord Brahma, more advanced is Lord Shiva, more advanced is Vaikuntha Pasis, especially Lakshmi Devi, more advanced is Prahlad Maharaj, more advanced is Hanuman, more advanced is Pandavas, amongst the Pandavas Yudhishthira Maharaj, more advanced are the Yadus, and amongst the Yadus Uddhav. And after Uddhava come the Brijabasis. So this is why Uddhava is a very important example for us, because we're here and we're also wanting to cultivate Raja Bhakti. So who did Krishna send to do that? He sent a devotee who was already on the highest platform of devotional service. Now Uddhava wasn't going to become a gopi or a cowherd boy, but Krishna wanted him to see what the highest is and to appreciate and understand. Uddhava is always Uddhava. He's not going to change. He's in the bhav of a servant. But nonetheless, Krishna wanted him to, and he came to Vrindavan, stayed in Vrindavan for some months, spoke about Krishna, and he observed. First thing he saw was Nanda Maharaj and Mother Yashoda, seeing their ecstatic symptoms. It's just like Narada Muni. We know that Narada Muni is the ultimate authority in devotional service. I mean, you can practically every chapter of the Bhagavatam he appears. And it's not just the Bhagavatam, the Puranas, he's everywhere. And nonetheless, Uddhava, although he understands and he knows the mood of the residents of Vrindavan, but he doesn't have it. He just shares it by association, but he is also in the mood of a servant. That's also his siddha. Well, we're not going to get as far as I plan to get here, but let's see. Yes, if you read the verse, and the verse goes, he said first that he attained prema, and next he attained sneha. Sneha is the next stage of love. The word prema is also used in a very generic sense. Prema means the first stage of love of Godhead, and it also means all the stages of love of Godhead. There are multiple uses of words. So here this word sampluta, completely melting his heart. This word pluta means that you're just inundated or soaked through and through with that love. So what are those stages of love? Well, Prabhupada sometimes mentions 8, sometimes mentions 9. Jiva Goswami only mentions 8. But they start off with rati, which is one sthai bhav, or your constitutional identity that you realize at the stage of bhava. And then after that is rati, prema, sneha, man, pranay, rag, anurag, bhav, mahabhav, and they all have subdivisions as well, especially mahabhav. So here's Srila Prabhupada's translation. Attraction, love, affection, adverse feelings, intimacy, attachment, subattachment, ecstatic love, and sublime ecstatic love. I mean, there's no English words that correspond to these, so you have to try to explain them, and even then it's difficult to explain them in a phrase which gives justice to the actual meaning. Prema. Well, I'm not going to get into further detail. We've got a minute, but here I wanted to explain what prema and sneha is, as well as the next stage, which is raga, and a certain phenomena called sankula rati, which is the mixture of rasas. Balaram. Balaram is friend. He's in a mood of parent. He's in the mood of servant. But what do we categorize him in? As friend, because that is dominant. So similarly, Uddhava, he experiences prema, sneha, rag, and a little touch of pranay. But still, because the relationship, and all of these signify different stages, because his relationship is a servant primarily, then he's known to be in the servant stage. And I mentioned about Uddhava's rise. It's very interesting. One point, and I'll just make that, the last point is one very brave devotee asked Srila Prabhupada, Prabhupada, how long did it take you to attain the perfection you got? How long did it take you to become Krishna conscious? And Prabhupada said, well, about 20 years. So we see in the lives of Bhaktivinoda Thakur Acharyas that it seems like they also develop their Krishna consciousness and come to a stage. But it's a contrary phenomena. All right, a sadhana bhakta, a devotee who's just a practitioner, then we have to go through Shraddha, Sadhu, Sangha, Bhajana, Kriya, and so on. We practice sadhana. So Srila Prabhupada may have also chanted Hare Krishna. He may have also practiced sadhana, as well as other Nitya Siddha devotees. May appear that Uddhava began when he was a little boy worshipping the deity, but they don't become Krishna conscious by sadhana. They're already Krishna conscious. So Chakravarti Thakur says that they become Krishna conscious by samskars. Samskar means by seeing Krishna, and just by hearing about Krishna, everything naturally comes. In other words, it's not developed because there's nothing to develop. It's there, but for the point of Krishna's Leela and setting them up as examples that everyone else can follow, therefore it appears externally that they're acting like that as sadhakas. I'm not going to hold on any further. There's still a lot more to analyze in this verse. It's a great science. The sadhana that we know takes a very small part of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Bhava Bhakti a little, but Prema Bhakti and Rasa, they very, very extensive science, and something about it we should know. You want to go somewhere, you want to know where you're going. And Back to Godhead is a good signpost, but still, what's going on over there, and what do you feel, and how is that awakened? Anyway, thank you all very much for your patience, and Shishi Pancha Tattva ki jai, Jai Shri Radha Madhav ki jai, Nishingadev Bhagavan ki jai, Jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai.